It's the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. If you don't know, now you know. If you ain't listening, why not? Boom.
This is the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by Scotty and Brian, with the quick picks that make you the quick bucks. We're going to succinctly cover the highlighted picks that will win you money. Let's get into it. So, Scotty, could you go ahead and start us off with our quarterbacks?
Yes, sir. So, first quarterback I want to talk about is some Matthew Stafford going against Oakland.
Mm-hmm.
It's projected as the second highest total of the week, and Oakland's actually favored by 2, but it's sitting at a 50.5 point total.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a high-scoring game. Stafford does have 29.97 DraftKings points over the last 2 games, so he's been heating up a little bit. Oakland is one of the worst teams against the pass, currently ranked 29th in the DVOA rankings, but they're actually a top 10 rush defense in the DVOA rankings, ranking at 9th.
Mm-hmm.
Not that really would matter too much, because Detroit didn't really do a good job of replacing Deante Johnson last week.
Yeah.
With that backfield only getting 59 rush yards against the Giants. So I don't think it's going to be a game where the run game's going to really get going. It's going to be on Stafford to really step up and produce all the points.
Yeah, and kind of ironically, as we typically do, I chose the other side of that.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with either side.
Yeah, I mean, Derek Carr is sitting at 5,500. I have the exact same thing down, total points of 50.5. It's going to be the highest point total. Also, if we're in favor of Derek Carr, is the fact that they're also playing at home, and he also has been getting heated up, and I think we can pair him up with his wide receiver 1, who's looking at, like, he's had a touchdown every single game. So I'm really liking some Williams in there. So I'm definitely feeling that. Again, the same reasons that you're looking at it is because it's going to be a shootout. It's definitely going to be a good game. And I'm looking forward to that. You want to go to the next one?
The other one I want to highlight, I'm going to do some Jameis Winston again. He's sitting at 6,100 against Seattle. And that's going to actually be the highest total of the week at 52.5. The Hawks are favored by 5.5 last I checked.
Yeah.
If you look at Winston, he's been averaging a little over 41 attempts a game over the last 3 games. Seattle's a little below average against the pass. They're allowing about 273 passing yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
And Tampa Bay hasn't had too strong of a run game, so much like Stafford, I think it's going to be on Winston to put the ball up a lot and really produce a lot of the offense going into Detroit or going into Seattle this week.
Yeah, I definitely had him written down as well. Also, to add to, I mean, he's really cheap for, a pretty good quarterback. He's sitting at 6,100, so
right.
It's a really good spot. Yeah, just completely agree with your pick there, 100%. One that I don't think was as I don't think a lot of people are going to be looking at him because he hasn't been doing too great, but Phillip Rivers finally has a healthy offense. He's sitting at 5,100. Both backs, both Eckler and Gordon, are receiving backs. So I think, even if they get a touchdown, hopefully it's a receiving touchdown. What I'm kind of gunning for, it's still a relatively high total, sitting at 48.5 points, and it's at home. Time for a bounce back, and you know how the Chargers always do. They start off really rough at the beginning of the season and then somehow are in the playoff picture. So I'm definitely leaning on some Rivers.
The only thing that has me a little worried about that is Keenan Allen is still questionable.
Yeah.
It sounds like he might be good to go, but
it looked like I think they said he was limited in practice.
Yeah, I think he was the last second decision he played last week, but he wasn't 100%, so he should be closer to 100% this week.
Yeah, agreed.
And it is a game against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers, which, those are 2 good quarterbacks, so that's going to be an interesting matchup. And the Packers are only favored by like 3.5.
Yeah, and it's at home, so I think they'll be able to put up at least decent numbers. Might not necessarily win, but should be able to put up numbers.
You get Keenan Allen for under 7,000.
Yeah. And then a lot of people are going to be off of him just because they see a question mark,
Yeah.
All right. So let's move on to running backs. One that I know right away, you're going to get angry at me for stealing, is Singletary. He's just too cheap. He's starting to do really well. Frank Gore is 36 years old. Obviously, we're going to go with the young guy that's more spry. He's back from the injury. He got 4 receptions last week with 6 targets. He's going to be putting up some numbers. And also, on top of it, they're playing Washington. So where can you go wrong there? So I'm leaning on him a lot. Price point is great. And, yeah, I don't know if there's anything I want to add to that one.
No, it's a pretty good pick. I mean, him or Gore. But, I mean, do you save money with Singletary? How much is Gore right now?
Let's see. Gore is sitting at... He's cheaper, but again, he's just kind of the guy that punches it out just for a few yards. He's older. He's not as explosive. He's not going to receive. He's kind of the old-time back.
I'm wondering how high owned they'll end up being just because it is the Washington matchup, but anyway, so I'm going with kind of a risky play on the other side of the ball with some Adrian Peterson. If you look at the Buffalo run D, it's maybe a little overrated at the moment. Peterson's sitting at a really good price point at 4,200. He'll definitely be low owned just because he's coming off of back-to-back low games against San Francisco and Minnesota, which are both top 10 run defenses.
Yeah.
Geis isn't quite back from IR. Chris Thompson didn't really do a whole lot, so it's really been Adrian Peterson's backfield so far for Washington. The one big stipulation I have with this pick is I do like it if Keenum's going to be playing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a chance that Haskins could be starting if Keenum doesn't pass the concussion protocol.
Yeah.
So if Keenum is in, I'm definitely going to play some Peterson at that price point. If not, I don't think I really want to touch it at all.
One of the only things I'm worried about is he was held out of practice today on Thursday. So he's out with an ankle held out of practice. So do you think he's going to be healthy enough to play?
He looked fine last week, and he had a solid game against Minnesota for,
definitely for the price point. But I'm just worried if he plays or not, just because, if they're held out on Thursdays, I'm kind of worried if they're going to play at all.
Yeah.
So that's the only caution that I have there.
I would guess it's like a veteran rest day sort of thing.
Well, they said it was an ankle injury. He was held out both Wednesday and Thursday.
Well, he played through it last week.
Yeah, true. So, the one that I think is a pretty obvious pick, but also he's a little bit pricey, is LeVeon Bell. He has not been putting up the points that he should be putting up, but also he has not been playing against the Miami Dolphins. He's going to be going up against a team that is completely tanking. He's pretty much their only offense. Darnold is non-existent lately. And I think he's going to be completely leaning on him 100%. Also, another fun fact, the coach mentioned after the Jags game that Bell needed more touches. So I think they're going to completely game plan around Bell, and they should be able to get the win, but regardless, he should be able to get up his points.
The only thing that weirds me out with Bell is he still has a high price tag for how little he's done this season.
Yeah, it's because he's a workhorse. It's just the environment. He's not able to do much.
I mean, he went up $800 after last week.
Yeah, and he did basically nothing.
He hasn't had a 20-point game since week 2, it looks like.
Yeah.
I mean, it is a good matchup for him to bounce back.
Yeah. I think they're favored by 3 by what I read. On an away game.
Yeah.
The only way they're going to win is leaning on Bell. Anybody else want to touch on?
This one's another risky one, but I do like a little bit of Derrick Henry going against Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
Carolina's been struggling against the run quite a bit. They're averaging 135 rushing yards allowed per game.
Yeah.
And the DVOA rankings actually has them ranked as dead last, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm. He
Henry
also
has
explosive games last year that were insane.
Yeah, Henry's getting more and more work in that backfield. Dion Lewis hasn't really been as involved as he used to be. Last year was a pretty close 50-50 timeshare, but Henry's definitely the number one guy by a big margin there.
Yeah. I just worry because he hasn't been able to put up those numbers. I mean, relative to the price point, I guess he's worth it. But again, I know he's always due one big, giant game in the middle of the season. That's always kind of the way he goes. He'll be kind of under the radar and then make somebody, the millionaire maker.
Yeah, and I think Tannehill's been a little bit of an upgrade over Mariota, so that should hopefully help the run game out and give him more opportunities.
Yeah, for sure.
But he's definitely going to be low owned, and that's why I really want to keep an eye on him this week.
And a relatively low price tag for him as well.
Right.
Do you want to go ahead? Well, let's go ahead and have you choose your first wide receiver that you want to go over.
The first one will be actually some Marvin Jones going against Oakland. I think Galladay is also a really good play here, but I do like Marvin Jones at a cheaper price point.
Mm-hmm.
Oakland is ranked, like I said before, they're ranked 29th against the pass in the DVOA rankings.
Definitely a lot of boom and bust picks out here, where it's like either they'll make you a ton of points or nothing.
Yeah, so I'm guessing because Galladay just had a big game week 8 with 32.3 points, he's going to be a little higher owned compared to Jones. But if you actually look at their production, it's not really a huge difference between the two.
Yeah,
Jones is
weak.
Yeah, Jones is averaging 15 DraftKings points a game, whereas Galladay's averaging 18. So it's not really a huge jump.
Yeah.
And target-wise, Jones is 6.7 targets versus Galladay's 7.9.
Mm-hmm.
So I do like Jones from the standpoint that you're saving $1,700. He's gonna be a little lower owned.
Yeah.
And so
100%.
Yeah.
So one that I know you're not gonna like the pick because it goes against your team a little bit, but Allen Robinson. The only way to really tackle your team is to go in the air. They've got a decent run defense, and Robinson has shown, even in the worst games, that he's still going to be eaten. He's been double digits almost every single game this season. He's been really solid. He has a baseline of 7 targets, and even 2 weeks ago against New Orleans, had 16 targets. So I'm leaning on him. I know that, your team is probably in a better position, and Mitch Trubisky kind of sucks. But at the same time, that's the way that he's going to score, and that's the points that is going to come from that game on that side of the ball is from Robinson.
I will say the Eagles secondary is getting a little healthier now. They're finally coming back together.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know.
Like that pick.
I just don't trust the Chicago offense right now.
I mean, nobody ever does, and even against a bad, offense, they've still been able to put up points. He's only had one relatively quiet week, which was an 8-point outing, and that's still reasonable. I know not for that price tag, but he's sitting at double digits almost every single game, and plus he's got 3 20, 25 plus games. Well, 2 25 plus, 1 20 plus game.
So I think Philly's getting healthy at the right time. They're starting to actually get a little bit better against the pass.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, this definitely would be a good pick, but
you don't think so right now?
I wouldn't bet on it.
Gotcha.
Well, how much time we got left?
Oh, we got plenty.
Plenty?
Yep.
All right, cool. One that I like this week, some Deante Johnson going against Indy.
Yeah.
He is sitting at 4,500, which is a very good price point. If you actually look, he has the exact same number of targets as Smith-Schuster in Rudolph's 4 starts at 27, so roughly a little under 8 a game.
Yeah.
He's coming off a pretty good game against Miami with 19.4 DraftKings points.
They're putting, I mean, that's basically being the wide receiver too, is just, they're so focused on Juju that Johnson's been able to blow up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's definitely turned into the clear cut too in this offense.
Yeah, 100%, and he's just not as targeted. So, or by the defenses, so he's able to get those deep passes. I like that pick a lot.
Yeah, it's a really good price point, and he's getting the volume.
Yeah, for sure. But one last one I wanted to touch on, which I know everybody's going to think is kind of ridiculous, but I'm looking at some Devante Parker on the Dolphins. I know it's kind of wacky, but just kind of similarly what you were talking about for the price point, he's sitting at 4,400. He's been amplified in targets ever since Fitzpatrick started. He's looking at 10 targets 2 weeks ago, 8 targets last week. Fitzpatrick loves to throw the ball. I would never choose Fitzpatrick with him because he's going to throw those interceptions and those stupid plays in there. But as far as Devante Parker goes, he's going to be getting his shots. He's been double digits almost all season besides one game, disregarding the New England game when they got 0 points. So I know it's not the best spot in the world, and it looks kind of wacky, but I still think he's going to be able to get, 10 plus points for 4,400.
No, that actually makes a lot of sense. I didn't even think about targeting the Miami passing attack.
Yeah, nobody does, and that's why it's going to be completely low owned, which is perfect.
The Jets are actually pretty good against the run, but they kind of suck against the pass.
Yeah. So, let's move on to our tight ends. And I'm going to take one right away, which I bet you were on like crazy. Zach Ertz.
Shit.
He's been really quiet lately, but he's got so much potential there. I know you can add on to it once I get done talking about him. His price has gone down to 4,700. We know what he can do. He has some weak weeks, which will lower the ownership, but he's still getting the same targets. He just dropped in receptions, and Chicago is 25th against tight end.
Yeah, he was. I think. I know we talk about this every week, but you pretty much have to pay up for tight ends to get a good floor.
Yeah, for sure.
I think Ertz is at a kind of a weird middle point where he's not quite up there with the top 3 or 4 guys, but he's not quite in the bottom half of tight ends.
Yeah.
He's sitting at 4,700, which is his cheapest price of the year so far.
Mm-hmm.
It will be interesting to see his ownership numbers because it is a really good price point, but he is on like a 3-game streak of bad games where he's under 10 DraftKings points a game.
Yeah.
But he is still leading the Eagles in targets at 7.9.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey,
I think it's a good point for him.
Yeah, Jeffrey is in second place with 6.7.
Yeah. Anybody else you want to go over?
Like I said before, I think, like I said, you're gonna have to pay up for the top guys or kind of take a risk with some of the lower guys. So that was the only one that I really had like notes on, just because he was kind of an interesting talking point because he's in the middle.
Yeah. Well, one that I was looking at, but it also kind of is dependent on something, is Jonnu Smith, because Delaney Walker is questionable right now. And the production, just kind of similarly what we were talking about earlier with Tannehill. Tannehill's been kind of an upgrade, and he's also really gotten some good chemistry going with Jonnu Smith, which his targets went up like crazy. He went up to 7 targets. He had 19.8 points. Then the previous week, he had 9. He's getting more targets. He's getting more focus. But if Delaney Walker is in there, they're probably going to split. So kind of looking at him, but it's kind of a hesitant look depending on what the situation plays out as far as if Delaney Walker plays.
Yeah, I think I feel like the Titans have been trying to replace Walker for a while, and I know they want to get Smith more involved.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be interesting to see if they kind of limit Walker, maybe give him like one more week off. But I mean,
I
7
think he
targets.
would be in a great spot if Delaney Walker is out.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with you there.
All right. Go ahead and start us off with your defense that you chose.
So I do like the Eagles defense going against Chicago this week. It's a 42.5 total. Philly's favored by 5.
Yeah.
Trubisky has not looked too inspiring. He's sitting at a 5-3 touchdown to interception ratio right now. And the most passing yards he's had in a game is 253.
Yeah.
Which, if you are going to beat Philly, you do have to be able to pass, and I don't see Trubisky being the guy to beat this defense.
Yeah.
And it's a good price point at $3,000.
Yeah, definitely. The one I was looking at is the Panthers. I think it's going to be a bounce back week for them. They're sitting at 2,800 right now. They've had 4 double-digit defensive games. They're going up against a journeyman quarterback with Tannehill, and I know I just complimented Tannehill for his chemistry, but at the same time, it's still a journeyman, and there's a reason he's a journeyman. You're playing at home, and it's one of the lower point games. The total is supposed to be 41.5. Plus, you know how much they love using McCaffrey. He's going to be running that clock, chewing away at it. So that's one of the biggest defenses that I kind of leaned on.
I don't know if I have much to add, unfortunately. I don't know. I didn't really look at the Panthers too much.
Yeah. No worries. I just think it's one of those. It's a good spot for them, for sure. And they've been really solid. It's just they just got embarrassed by the 49ers. All right, let's get on to our sneaky pick of the week. Go ahead and start us off.
Let me think. So, I guess one that I didn't quite get around to talking about is some Jalen Samuels going against Indy.
Mm-hmm.
This is going to be entirely dependent on whether or not Connor will play, which kind of looking 50-50 at the moment.
Yeah.
If Connor is out, then that makes Samuels like the best back that's still available because Snell is sitting at doubtful. So Samuels will be getting the starting role at $4,000 DraftKings dollars, which is a really cheap price point for a starting running back. And if Pittsburgh can get the run game going, they're happy to roll with it if they can.
Yeah, for sure. And they also kind of both play as receiving backs as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Although, even on top of that, every now and then he's the quarterback, although he threw the interception. Remember when they tossed it back? I can't remember what game that was, but they were trying to do a trick play, and they let him throw it, and it was so embarrassing. But if they decide to do those trick plays again, could get you some quarterback points in there. But that was absolutely embarrassing. I was very brokenhearted when they did that. Can't remember what team it was, but it was right by the end zone, and then they returned it for a touchdown. So they might not do that trick play again, but definitely if he's the starting back, for sure. The only thing is I do think Connor is looking healthy enough. So I think he'll be in there. But similarly, I chose somebody that's very dependent on somebody else. Royce Freeman. Philip Lindsay he has a wrist injury right now. So he was limited to practice. It looks like he's still going to practice. But say he doesn't play, Royce Freeman is going to get all the touches. And I was leaning on him because at the same time, you got a new quarterback in there. And, what do they do with the rookie quarterbacks? They let them be able to hand it off a lot more. Also, Cleveland has the 28th ranked run D. So they're at the bottom of the barrel. If there's a way to beat Cleveland, which there's plenty of ways to beat them, but that's going to be the way. And they're sitting at 4,900 for a starting running back if Philip Lindsay isn't playing.
That is very risky just because we don't know what the backup quarterback's going to bring to the table, just because he hasn't played in an NFL game quite yet.
Yeah. I get that.
That's all I have to really say about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're on to our gut check. You want me to go ahead and start us off?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Let's see here. So, first off, I'm going to go with some Derek Carr in here. Doing my pick right there with a high point total. Going to go to the wide receivers. Going to look at Williams. He should be good. He's got the questionable tag right now, but he should be fine. He practiced. It was just a limited practice. So I think we're good there. Plug in our running back pick. Going to go with that Singletary. Again, just healthy. Going up against Washington, which should be an easy game. I'll pay up a little bit for some LeVeon Bell. I know it's a little bit of a punt play like we talked about, but I think it's a good punt play and a good spot. Wide receiver. Let's see here. I'm going to go with some Robinson against your better judgment. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the defense. Let's choose the Panthers. Trying to see how much money I have available. One that I didn't get to touch on that I was also thinking about is some Vance McDonald at that price point. He hasn't had a big game yet, but I think he's due one. And again, he's a big guy, and we've seen what he can do. And then, let's see here. I've got 6,200 left over per position with 2 spots. I'm going to go with one of your picks, Kenny Golladay. You'll see after 4,800 left over who I have available. Who else? Zach Ertz. And that is a wrap.
All right, let me get caught up real quick. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in some Stafford, and I'm going to pair him up with some Marvin Jones.
All right.
Running back wise, I'm going to do some Jordan Howard. Should be a nice little revenge game for him against Chicago, and he has had a good price point at 5,100.
Yeah, he is. I didn't even think about him at all.
Let's see. I'm going to save some money with some AP, and let's move over to receivers. Going to go ahead and do some Deante Johnson.
You're going to have a lot of money left over.
And the last receiver, let me do some DK Metcalf. He's starting to finally gel with Russell Wilson.
Yeah. I had him in my notes. We just didn't get to touch on him.
Yeah, we talked about Winston. I mean, I do have notes on Wilson, but I think most of that Tampa Bay and Seattle game is in play, especially receiving-wise. So tight end-wise, I'm going to pay up for some Waller.
Yeah, he's been consistent all year.
And we're going to go ahead and plug in the Eagles defense. Leaves us with 8,400.
We've got some money to spend.
Yeah.
I almost think you should do some switching around.
That's what I'm thinking. So let me take out AP. Let me do Derrick Henry instead.
All Right.
And we'll be sitting at 6,900.
Yeah, that's more reasonable. Because
Yeah.
everybody's either like super expensive or like super cheap as far as the picks go.
We'll go ahead and plug in some Hilton. Hopefully, it looks like there's a good chance he'll play.
Let's see. Hilton. Yeah. He's been pretty consistent. So I guess I got worried after that last game, but he's always been a go-to guy. And he's had some pretty good games so far this year.
Always like by far the best receiver for the Colts right now.
Yeah.
All right, that's going to do it for us for the Week 9 edition of the BSDFS Fantasy Football Podcast. Hopefully you guys can take these picks and go out there and win some money. Thanks for tuning in, and that's going to do it for us. Peace.